So the Democrats running for their party's nomination for Attorney General are wrestling with the balance between civil liberties and crime fighting. It comes as those communities, like Fort Collins, weigh whether they want flock cameras on their streets. Tonight, we'll hear from 3 of them on the topic. Jenna Griswold has declined to answer questions on any topic from us. Kyle Clark has tonight's next conversation with workers' rights attorney David Seligman, former federal prosecutor Hetal Doshi, and Boulder DA Michael Doherty.
Do flock cameras and other surveillance cameras keep people safer?
I don't think so. I don't think the way they're being used now, at the very least, right?
Law enforcement says they're essential to solve crime.
Yeah. Well, here's what I'll say about that. The way they're being used now, very often with law enforcement accessing this data without a warrant, which I think, based on, and it could depend from jurisdiction to jurisdiction and how they're using these cameras, but based on what we're seeing in lots of parts of the state, I think that violates Colorado constitutional protections, and I think that's something we ought to take on. And I'm deeply concerned about this marriage of big tech and local law enforcement surveillance. I am open to the possibility that some of these tools, when used in accordance with the Constitution, could serve really valuable and important purposes, but I don't think we're seeing that right now.
I think that the questions around surveillance that are posed by Flock or Axon or any of those surveillance systems are a subset of a much bigger problem, which is the widespread collection of data about Americans writ large by private companies, and then the sale and commodification of that data, whether it's to the federal government or to the other companies. And so that is why my background and experience in having taken on big tech in the most consequential battles of our time and succeeding really matters, because it makes me an authoritative voice, not just here in Colorado on this issue, but more nationally as well, in making sure that any big tech company that seeks to provide those types of products here in Colorado know they have a formidable adversary in me in terms of making sure that Coloradans are protected.
Did you support the legislation the Democrats tried to and didn't muster enough support for in the last legislative session that would have required judicial warrants for access to surveillance camera systems?
I did not.
And why did you not support that?
Because I think that there are problems with respect to the constitutionality of some of that legislative effort, and I also think that there needs to be additional clarity around appropriate uses of information by law enforcement.
I think the bill went too far in requiring law enforcement to get warrants to access information they already had. So it was trying to capture every type of camera that law enforcement has access to and requiring them to get warrants for that. I think that's something that can and should, and as Attorney General, I promise you, will be worked out in the future.
What does a better compromise look like?
A better compromise, for example, would be a camera system that's run solely by the law enforcement agency, that they have it locked down, that how they run that system is transparent with the community, that the community is aware of what the cameras are being used for, and that it's used for traffic enforcement or serious criminal violations, but not for anything related to ICE and nothing related to violating people's privacy rights.
You can see Kyle's full interviews with David Seligman, Hetal Doshi, and Michael Doherty on the Next YouTube channel. Tomorrow on Next, the candidates discuss whether Jenna Griswold's thin legal resume qualifies her to be Attorney General.